Hello, listeners. This is the 16th continuing video of Mahabharat audio series. This video will be regarding chapter number 16, Draupadi's Swayamvara. So, let's begin with the chapter. While the Pandavas were living in disguise as Brahmins at Ekchakrapura, news of the Swayamvara of Draupadi, the daughter of Drupad, king of Panchal, reached them. Many Brahmins of Ekchakrapura planned to go to Panchal in the hope of receiving the customary gifts and to see the festivities and pageant of a royal wedding. Kunti, with her motherly instinct, read her son's desire to go to Panchal and win Draupadi. She told Yudhishthir, "We have been in the city so long that it is time to think of going somewhere else. We have seen these hills and dales till we are tired of them. The alms doled out to us are diminishing, and it is not good to outstay your entertainment. Let us therefore go to Draupad's kingdom, which is reputed to be fair and prosperous." Kunti was second to none in worldly wisdom and sagacity, and could gracefully divine her son's thoughts and spared them the awkwardness of expressing them. The Brahmins went in groups to witness the Swayamvar, and the Pandavas mingled with them in the guise of Brahmins. After a long march, the party reached the beautiful city of Drupad and belated themselves in the house of a potter as obscure Brahmins of no note. Though Drupad and Dron were outwardly at peace, the former never could forget and forgive the humiliation he had suffered at the latter's hands. Drupad's one wish was to give his daughter in marriage to Arjun. Dron loved Arjun so dearly that he could hardly look upon his pupil's father-in-law as his deadly foe, and if there were a war, Drupad would be the stronger of being Arjun's father-in-law. When he heard the news of the destruction of the Pandavas at Varnavrat, he was plunged in sorrow, but was revealed by a later rumor that they had escaped. The marriage hall was beautifully decorated and built amidst a finely laid out group of new guest houses designed to accommodate the Swayamvar suitors and guests. Attractive sights and sports had been arranged for public entertainment, and there were glorious festivities for 14 days continuously. A mighty steel bow was placed in the marriage hall. The candidate for the prince's hands was required to string the bow and with it shoot a steel arrow through the central aperture of a revolving disc at a target placed on high. This required almost superhuman strength and skill, and Drupad proclaimed that the hero who would win his daughter should perform this feat. Many valiant princes had gathered there from all parts of Bharatvarsh. The sons of Dhritarashtra were there as well as Karna, Krishna, Shishupal, Jarasandha, and Salya. Besides the competitors, there was a huge concourse of spectators and visitors. The noise that issued therefrom resembled the uproar of the ocean, and over it all arose the auspicious sound of festal music from hundreds of instruments. Drishtadyumna, on horseback, rode in front of his sister Draupadi, seated on an elephant. Fresh from her auspicious bridal bath, and clad in flowing silk, Draupadi dismounted and entered the Swayamvar hall, seeming to fill it with the sweetness of her presence and perfect beauty. Garland in hand and coyly glancing at the valiant princes, who for their part looked at her in speechless admiration, she ascended the dais. The Brahmins repeated the usual mantras and offered oblations in the fire. After the peace invocation had been chanted and the flourish of music had stopped, Drishtadyum took Draupadi by the hand and led her to the center of the hall. Then he proclaimed in clear, loud tones, "Hear ye, O princes seated in state in this assembly. Here is the bow, there is the target, and here are the arrows. He who sends 5 arrows in succession through the hole of the wheel and unerringly hits the target, if he also be of good family and presence, shall win my sister." Then he narrated to Draupadi the name, ancestry, and description of the several suitors assembled there. Many noted princes rose one after another and tired in vain to string the bow. It was too heavy and stiff for them, and they returned to their places abashed and ashamed. Shishupal, Jarasandha, Salya, and Duryodhan were among these unsuccessful aspirants. When Karna came forward, all the assemblage expected that he would be successful, but he failed by just a hair's breadth, and the string slid back, flashing, and the mighty bow jumped out of his hands like a thing of life. There was great clamor and angry talk, some even saying that it was an impossible test put up to shame the kings. Then all noises were hushed. From there arose from among the group of Brahmins a youth who advanced towards the bow. It was Arjun, who had come disguised as a Brahmin. When he stood up, wild clamor burst forth again from the crowd. The Brahmins themselves were divided in opinion, some being highly delighted that there should be among them a lad of mettle enough to compete, while others were envious or worldly wise, said what impudence it was for this brahmacharin to enter the list when heroes like Karna, Salya, and others had met with failure. But there were others again who spoke differently, as they noted the noble and shapely proportions of the youth. They said, "We feel from his appearance that he is going to win. He looks sure of himself, and he certainly knows what he is about. The Brahmin may be physically weaker, but is it all about a matter of brute strength? What about the power of austerities? Why should he not try?" And they all blessed him. Arjun approached the place where the bow lay and asked Drishtadyum, "Can a Brahmin try to bend the bow?" Drishtadyum answered, "O best of Brahmins, my sister will become the life mate of anyone of good family and presence who bends the bow and shoots the target. My words stand, and there will be no going back on them." Then Arjun meditated on Narayan, the supreme god, and took the bow in his hand and strung it with ease. He placed an arrow on the string and looked around with him with a smile, while the crowd was lost in spellbound silence. Then, without pause or hesitation, he shot 5 arrows in succession through the revolving mechanism right into the target so that it fell down. The crowd was in tumult, and there was a blare of musical instruments. The Brahmins, who were seated in the assembly in large numbers, sent forth shouts of joy, waving aloft their deerskins in exultation, as though the whole community had won Draupadi. The uproar that followed was indescribable. Draupadi shone with a fresh beauty. Her face glowed with happiness, which streamed out of her eyes as she looked on Arjun. She approached him and placed the garland on his neck. Yudhishthir, Nakul, and Sahadev returned in haste to the potter's house to convey the glad news immediately to their mother. Bhim alone remained in the assembly fearing that some danger might befall Arjun from the Kshatriyas. As anticipated by Bhim, the princes were loud in wrath. They said, "The practice of Swayamvara, the choosing of a bridegroom, is not prevalent among the Brahmins. If this maiden does not care to marry a prince, she should remain a virgin and burn herself on the pyre. How can a Brahmin marry her? We should oppose this marriage and prevent it so as to protect righteous and save the practice of Swayamvar from the peril which threatens it." A free fight seemed imminent. Bhim plucked a tree by the roots and, stripping it of foliage, stood armed with this formidable blood gown by the side of Arjun, ready for an event. Draupadi said nothing, but stood holding onto the skirts of the deerskin in which Arjun was clad. Krishna, Balram, and others sought to appease the princes who had created the confusion. Arjun proceeded to the house of the potter, accompanied by Draupadi. As Bhim and Arjun were taking Draupadi to their temporary abode, Drishtadyumna followed them at a distance and, unseen by them, closely observed everything that took place there. He was amazed and delighted at what he saw, and returning, he secretly told King Drupad, "Father, I think they are the Pandavas." Draupadi accompanied them, holding to the skirts of the deerskin of that youth, and she was not at all abashed. I also followed, and I saw all five, and a venerable and august lady, who I have no doubt is Kunti herself. Invited by Drupad, Kunti and the Pandavas went to the palace. Dharmaputra confided to the king that they were the Pandavas. He also informed him of their decision to marry Draupadi in common. Drupad rejoiced at knowing that they were the Pandavas, which set at rest all anxiety regarding the amenity of throne, but was surprised and disgusted when he heard that they would jointly marry Draupadi. Drupad opposed this and said, "How unrighteous! How did this idea get into your head, this immoral idea that goes against the traditional usage?" Yudhishthira answered, "O king, kindly excuse us. In a time of a great peril, we vowed that we would share all things in common, and we cannot break that pledge. Our mother has commanded us so." Finally, Drupad yielded, and the marriage was celebrated. Chapter 16 finishes here. Keep listening Mahabharat audio in the next videos.